Hi, we are live. This is Rock Your Life with Nora Finch. I am here again with Rodger Ruge, right?
You
And
got
we
it.
are we are doing another show today. I almost might want to say this is part three now together, and it is how to trust the struggle of life that has its emotional ups and downs. And we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go over a couple of different things, kind of winging it today. But what I wanted to start with, and I kind of wanted to start doing this in all of my episodes, is read from this book, this author from, I believe this is 1800s or something now, early 1800s. Okay. Ernest Holmes, who is the author of The Science of the Mind, but this book in particular is called This Thing Called You. Oops. And also, people, there's a lot of references to the word or the person, or however you want to say, as God. You can always replace it with something else of what resonates with you. Because for me, also, a lot of people that don't know my story, I was raised both Baptist, very strict Baptist, and also Buddhist, but Buddhism is just the side I related to more. So for me, I would actually, I don't know to say get angry or irritated by the words pray and actually God as this person, higher source being, physical, like all those sorts of things. So when I read some of this stuff, I would get irritated. And so using that word because it doesn't resonate with me. But there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't reference to it, and there's a lot of great, beautiful things. So that's why I'm reading it today. Okay. This is page 69. I expect everything I do to prosper. I enthusiastically expect success. I let good flow into my experience. I am seeing good in every direction I look. I am looking forward to more good. I am entering into a deeper understanding of life. I am recognizing my union with all people and all events. I carefully guard my thought. I refuse to permit anything antagonistic or unlovely to enter my consciousness. I am learning to live in joy and peace and in calm confidence. I am putting my whole trust, faith, and confidence in the good. I think with clarity, move with ease, and accomplish without strain. Divine guidance is yours for the asking. The answer to any problem which can ever confront you already exists at the center of your being. It is not enough merely to know that divine guidance exists. You must use it. You use it by consciously recognizing its source within yourself and by deliberately calling upon it, expecting it to answer. Lastly, just this part. Say. When you have compiled with love, you can use the law without any sense of limitation or fear. So say to yourself, letting go of all previous mistakes, I know that today I am free and unhindered. I feel the operation of divine love and universal law in my affairs. I know that everything I am doing is governed by love and controlled through law. And on and on and on. Did you like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly how I try
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes succeed at living my life. These tenets are beautiful, profound, and implementing them within the struggles of life can be some of the greatest challenges we face.
Well, I think, some of the reasons when I look back, people, I feel like when you don't know what's going on here in life, you're just the beginning. Maybe some of us knowing, like, I know I'm supposed to like help people or whatever it is, but people don't start, we interchange the words, right? Pray and meditate. Don't start to do any sort of prayer or anything unless they feel somebody gets sick, something bad happens or whatever. It's like, why you got to wait? Why are we waiting? And so finding something that resonates with you is really important. Like you mentioned, the value system. But I think one of the best things, and like I said, like I had my own one-sidedness and what I felt too, in a way, like growing up was my way, or the things I perceived about the world, but I had negativities about praying, right? So I think like what I did of everything I learned, all these different philosophies, is I created my own sort of Bible. So that's the way I think people, once you start learning different systems, is a great way, because it makes you feel good to listen to things and read things like this, right? There is a reason we're innately attracted to strength. I think sometimes people don't realize that, or again, don't know what it feels like. Read some things and listen to some things, and you will like this, or maybe there's something else. So if you don't have a faith you believe in, or whatever it is, like there's a lot of beautiful things out there, including poetry. So and different kinds of poetry, masculine poetry, whatever you want to call it. So I really encourage people. This is the way, to me, one of the ways to reprogram and retrain your brain every day, even if it's like 3 sentences. So why aren't we taught like something? I don't know. What do you think? Did your parents teach you anything about?
Well, there's a couple comments I'd have about this. I was raised Lutheran. You had the double B, Buddhist and Baptist. I was raised Lutheran. So if you're not familiar with Lutheran foundations, Luther broke away from the Catholic Church because it was too liberal, and he felt that the Pope at that time was, in fact, the Antichrist. So if you want to talk about strict Catholicism, check out Luther. And, I really rebelled against that. And so did my parents ultimately. They left the church after an event took place that really shattered their faith and foundation in the Lutheran church. And so I was raised from that point with, look, there is something out there. Go discover what it is for yourself. So I was given this freedom to expand. And as I listened to the words of, Ernest Holmes, who was quite an amazing person and had some deep, deep insights, he founded an entire movement. I think about those words, and then I think, well, what about our friends who are non-believers in something beyond the self? Let's take it all the way to the extreme. Let's take it to agnostics and atheists. There's still a good reason to read those words every single day. And here's the science. Inside your brain is the reticular activating system, a pattern recognition device. It's what keeps you alive every day, because you recognize the different things that you need to know in your world because of that pattern recognition. Now, in that first responder world, you are hypervigilant by default to danger in your environment. You can go anywhere and immediately scan a room, which you will do, and you go, that person's a problem. You just spot it just like that. And the rest of the world's completely oblivious, but you, not being naive, have tuned your reticular activating system to a high degree of ability to filter the environment for danger. Unbelievable. The problem is we get out of balance with that. And then we go into a restaurant and we can't be in that restaurant unless we're at the back, be able to scan the entire environment. We don't go to movie theaters because shootings happen at movie theaters. I don't let my kid spend the night at a friend's house without checking to see if they're a sex offender. And we're going to do a background. You know what I mean? Like, it can get so out of balance. So the way to counterbalance that is to read with as much emotion as you allow yourself to feel. The emotional piece is a key part of programming the reticular activating system. When we do this and we read these words, imagine starting your day with exactly what you read today, Nora, which was beautiful. The
So
reticular
simple.
activating
So
system,
simple too.
so simple. That RAS is taking it in, and it is now going to look for things that validate that program in the environment. You're never going to lose your ability to protect yourself. I promise you. You're a warrior. You got it. It's there. It's innate. The problem is it's overpowering everything in your life. Start balancing by looking for things in the world that are beautiful, that give you joy, happiness. That's good too. Essential too. And Ernest Holmes's words can sit there in that reticular activating system scanning. Now, here's another little add-on. At the end of your day, read the words again and ask yourself, where did I see the examples of this today? And now the last thoughts you have before you go to sleep programs that subconscious processor. And while you're sleeping, it'll be running that loop. And the next day you get up and repeat that process. Now you do this enough and your world's going to change because your perception of the world has changed. Now, again, here's the caution. I hear it all the time, but Rodger, that'll make me unsafe. No, I'm going to emphasize once again, you will still pick up on danger and you'll pick up on joy, beauty, happiness, love. You'll see the couple crossing the street still holding hands because they're deeply in love, and that'll move you for a moment to feel good about something. That's how we counterbalance all the negativity, all the dysfunction.
I love that. Okay, let's go back though with you. If you were to rewind how you used to be, and again, I don't know as a first responder if it's a combination of things, right? Anger, frustration, all these sorts of things, maybe negativity, because maybe you didn't see it like that. I think this is a baby step, but how can they even, how do you know that there is light or believe that there is light or that there is another way or that that's a good thing, or how?
How indeed. You know, we were talking before the show about mentors. This
Mm-hmm.
is where the key comes in because we know what we know. We think within our box, and sometimes we expand the box a little, but it's still our box. And so we get stuck in loops and that kind of thing. When I was a younger man, my attitude, my primary attitude was one of negativity, cynicism, and I'm going to protect the weak. So that was the
Mm-hmm.
foundations of how I navigated life as a general rule. Now, I'm still a fairly happy person. I went out and I had friends and all that, but my baseline was there. And it began to shift over time to become the predominant way my personality was. And I noticed relationships were suffering. My ability to do my job was less. I was in conflict more, fights a lot more. I wasn't coming from the heart anymore. And you come in with this idea that you're going to save the world and you realize you're a band-aid on a machine gun wound, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
just keeps adding fuel to this fire. I have been very blessed to have had multiple people who fulfilled mentorship roles for me that showed me a different way to be. This was both officers that I worked with, officers from other agencies, and other people just in general who saw life through a different lens and allowed me to see how they perceived life through that lens, which significantly expanded the constraints that I had in my rather tiny box. And it's been an evolution. There is no revolution here. You don't just kick open the door and suddenly flip on the switch and it's rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies. That's a load of bullshit. And anybody who tells you their system lets you do that is trying to sell you something. This is slow, steady trickle
Process.
of work to create more balance, more beauty, more love in your life. And you can do that. And then when you tip, well, that's how you view the world. And once again, I want to emphasize you'll still spot the problems that are out there, the danger, but you're going to just be so much more balanced, centered, grounded, happy.
And what do you think? Do you think there was a moment where you're like, I gotta change something, or I'm not happy, or you like you heard somebody like a mentor say something and you're like, I like that. Like I wanna think like that. Do you think was there a moment?
I've had a couple of them. One of them was a woman that I was in a relationship with just called out my BS. And it was like a slap across the face because I couldn't argue the truth of it. Like it was a download. Like that's some shizzle right there, right? So
That's for real.
to
Yeah.
this day, I really, it's one of the defining moments of my life that helped to, that was a door getting kicked open and she turned the lights on inside the room and shoved my head in there and said, "You better look around in here."
Do you want to
That was
share? Do you want to share?
Well, I mean, that was essentially it. I mean, she said, "God, you're so negative. You're just, always pessimistic. You're always looking at the glass half empty." She just had had enough,
Mm,
and in a rather explosive way, called me out. But it was exactly what I needed to hear at that moment in time, and it was one of those pivotal moments where I really began to question my own narrative. And then the other defining moment happened in a martial arts seminar, well, a class that I was taking. And I can't remember if I've shared this with you, Nora, or not, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. We had a guard from San Quentin prison who
yes.
came to train with us,
Uh-huh.
big, steroid,
Mm-hmm.
nasty human being. And he challenged my teacher to a fight. They had the fight. And at the end, my teacher never hit him once. And the guy fell on the ground exhausted from his exertions. My teacher went over with love and helped him up, dusted him off, and was not angry at him, not in any way. He only projected love. I became very interested in how did you do that? And that
Mm-hmm.
turned me on to meditation. And once I started traveling the meditation path, I was now surrounded by
Mm.
people practicing this as a lifestyle. I noticed how grounded and balanced they were, and all my perceptions of people who meditate, the dirty hippie staring at a candle flame, who's so useless in life he can't even tie his shoes, turned out to be completely wrong. There are a couple of those people in the community, but the vast majority are people doing great work in the world and are using these things to expand into more happiness, more joy, love, service to community. There was no downside. And so those were the kind of the two pivotal moments that helped me to take a pretty big step and get curious. And then once that curiosity got lit, that little flame, no turning that off.
Well, there's no turning it off once you start seeing in your life. If you ask and you say, I want to overcome this, I would like help with this, bring me somebody, like it's on. And then on top of that, when you know you can create, it's like I could tell so many stories you don't even understand, where I am just like, oh my God, it's coming, it's faster and faster. Like within 5 minutes, I'll think of somebody at my side job cafe and they walk in the door. Like within 5 minutes. So I'm like, okay, this is rad. Okay, so I got to think of a way in my series or something, because, and I'm say it right here, give a sample, is that when you were younger or whatever, maybe you did this and you're like, that was a weird coincidence. What was that? Or that was just a coincidence. That was weird. What's going on? I don't know. But you never thought you like how to utilize it. How am I going to benefit from this? You just think it's weird and you can't explain, right? And then I just started messing around with it. So that was part of my journey too. But now, because I know I can create, I'm like, oh, this is happening. This first responder and humanity and everything, this is happening, I hope, in my lifetime, because there's lots of people I feel like too in my age range that like we know how to do it, we know how to get it done. And so I'm like, oh, I don't know if it takes my whole lifetime. um okay, so I love that. I want to back up for those people though, and talk about um your the comment about thinking negative. What did your significant at the time say something specifically, like how did she define negative? Because there's real being realistic, like somebody could think like my dad, he says that he's like, I think some people would think I'm like, well, if you're always going there, because I would always say to him when I would ask something, right, can I go to whatever whatever, and we give me this long drawn out thing about all the facets of it, and I'm all, so is that no? Does that mean no? Okay, no. So what do you think is how you were perceived? Like, how were you negative, in your opinion? Well, she didn't want to be
I'll
with
give
you.
you a great example.
One
I
thing
could have
though, she
won the
didn't.
lottery and I would have found a problem in that.
What did she say she was going to break up with you, or wanted to break up
She
with you
did.
because? Okay,
Yep, she did.
okay,
And that's when I took
okay.
a good hard look at it. And I appreciate it. Like I really do, with time and reflection. But as we think about this, there is a healthy cynicism, a healthy negativity, and a first responder has to have that. Because if you don't, my goodness, you're going to get blindsided and you're going to have something bad happen to you. But the problem is, as the years go on and you're exposed to more and more trauma, more and more dysfunction, it's heaping all of that together. And then that's how you see the world. That's where I was. And that default mechanism, while it is an essential survival tool, can also cause us a lot of grief in the end, you know. And so it was that moment of getting called out in such a harsh way and losing a relationship as a result of it that made me step back. And suddenly I had a broader perspective. I was so stuck, Nora, in my own narrative, my own story. And when we keep telling ourselves the same story over and over again, guess what I'm programming my reticular activating system to scan the world for? And then
Mm-hmm.
I see it everywhere. Well, there's my validation. See, the rest of you were wrong because you're idiots. You can't see it. I see it. Hey, look, here's this example and this example. And then they tell me about sunshines, rainbows, unicorns, and butterflies. And I'm like, bullshit. It's this, 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 and this because here's the validation. And I have proven it to myself to the point where that personality now creates my personal reality, as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, right? He's exactly right. But the beauty of this, and I think the thing that is probably most essential to anyone listening to the show, is I am living proof you can reprogram. I'm living proof that you don't
Mm-hmm.
give up the essential aspects of that that keep you safe. And you can bring in so much more balance. And it's just such a more peaceful place to be. Every aspect of my body and my mind became enhanced, not the opposite, enhanced. And it's just a slow, steady work. I don't obsess over it. And when I hear the little voice come up that is still present, sometimes that guy, if I'm tired and my resilience is low, that guy comes to the forefront again, and I have to have a conversation with him and say, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. Now, please go back to the back of the bus. The master is driving again. Have a
Mm-hmm.
good day. I'll take your input and consider it. And I don't fight myself anymore. You know, in the beginning, when I tried to make these shifts, I thought, man, something's wrong with me. I must be mentally ill. No, once I realized this is actually just an internal program, I could lighten up on myself and just continue doing the work, doing the process of evolving into someone. And I'm still evolving to this day. This is a never ending journey, but I like the journey. It brings me so
And
much joy.
And sometimes it takes a long time, especially for certain lessons. And that's for another show we can get into, like what kind of calls you attract and stuff like that. Right. I think definitely first responders would expect that. And I can see the life connections because you will keep getting right the same calls, right? If you
How
don't.
many times have we said, that guy's a shit magnet?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
That's me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I just kept attracting the most outrageous stuff you could possibly imagine. I was like, what's going? And here's interesting piece too. As I began to shift,
What
so did
happened?
that experience.
Yeah, what happened? So it went from like what? Like what
It
kind of
went
a
from
call?
fighting 4 or 5 times a week, literally,
Uh-huh.
sometimes all death is on the line fights, to I might have fought or struggled with someone once every quarter because I became so
Interesting.
centered, so grounded, so balanced that I could communicate more effectively with people. I could talk them out of crisis. So instead of beating them out of crisis, I talked them out of crisis. And wow, everything shifts. The respect for the officer shifts, the community relations shift. Everything is better and balanced. You know, in the beginning, if you don't have good mentorship, and the department I started with was very kind of cowboy. You know, one of my lieutenants during my orientation said, "In this department, if anyone messes with us, they go to the hospital, then they go to jail." Read me. So that was very old school, and I'm dating myself. And people, you know, oh, that's why we should defund and reform. Well, yeah, right. We want to remove that kind of aspect of service, quote unquote, We need to get that out of the profession. It's not that we don't have the ability to utilize force when we're legally, morally, and ethically justified, but the question becomes, am I creating that? And could I have a shift here that is of even greater service to the person that I'm dealing with, the community at large? These are broad questions that are very important to consider, because I was justified in all that use of force. But the problem was I was also creating the situation that called for that use of force many times. And so when I shifted my attitude, I didn't become unsafe. I became more skilled at de-escalation, which is a very popular word today. We didn't even have it when I started my job. What would that even be considered? So that's the evolutionary aspect of it, Nora. That's the beauty of it, is that you become more oriented to community through the heart, but you are not diminished in your officer's safety. I think that's a key point.
So, what do you think? We could totally go on with the positive thinking thing. Is that what is something like, imagine if all law enforcement or first responders did this? The positive, you're going into a call in a new way you can be, instead of predicting or anticipating or thinking that there's going to be a fight, because it doesn't always have to be like that. It doesn't always have to be like, yeah, there's a lot of different, right? Personality disorders, mental health problems. There's a lot of things out there. I don't know how much you deal with it, and it depends on where you live and things like that. But is there something, though, that they can do? um, it could be really simple, right? Before you go to the call, like, um, that it's going to go smoothly. I don't know. Do you think that there's like a maybe a statement or something you've said to yourself, or because I don't believe it's like you're gonna be like, okay, everything's just going to be, like you said, going to be so horrible or whatever it is. Like, do you have a statement or something, like, or even just saying, like, do you like love thoughts, or just in the morning you do just your main prayer meditation thing, and then, like, what would you do before a call, or that you'd recommend? What can they do?
Well, I love the question, and we're going to go right back to Ernest Holmes. So one of the things that we can do is, instead of just crushing the alarm clock, going to grab a cup of joe and heading out the door, right? Why not sit for a moment on the edge of the bed? And I mean a moment, just a couple of minutes is enough, and read a passage like that. Or maybe we create a mission statement and we say, today I enter into service of
Yes.
community with an open heart and no fear. I am prepared to meet with people who might be hostile against me, but I still come in with a heart of service. Maybe we say something like that to program our mind through the day. Now, here's the piece that I think is super critical. As I began evolving, one of the practices I did was I would take about 3 minutes between calls for service, if possible, if it wasn't, lights and siren, got to get there. And I would begin to breathe, and I would take breaths, about 5 breaths to 6 breaths a minute. I'd slow my breathing down. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. That gives you 6 breaths a minute. And what that would do would parasympathetically restore me. Oddly enough, if you do that for 3 minutes, you can stay in that parasympathetic calm area, centered, grounded, balanced area for up to 6 hours. My habit became, between calls, I would take 3 minutes to breathe, center myself. I even took it to the point where, here's the hot call, light siren, here we go, and I'd begin the breathing process on the way to the call. So instead of coming to the call all stressed out from driving code 3, lights and siren blaring and all that, I'd come in centered, grounded, and ready, and I would see everything. It was crazy. This got to the point where I became um, gifted enough at it that there were 3 moments in my career where I had the legal, moral, and ethical right to use deadly force against the person that I was dealing with. In all 3 instances, I started to pull the trigger. And I came into those situations calm, centered, balanced. And as I'm literally pulling the trigger, we're now talking milliseconds, right? Time slowing down to milliseconds. I could see the situation change, and the need for deadly force was not required in that millisecond range.
Mm.
This is not an exaggeration. That's what meditation did for me. It saved me from having to shoot 3 times. Can you imagine the lawsuits, the stuff that goes along with the taking of a life or just shooting someone who survives? Even that, I didn't have to do any of that. And that was all a result of me slowing down, staying centered, staying grounded, perceptual awareness enhanced, situational awareness enhanced to the point of like having superpowers.
Mhm.
That's the beauty of it. Now imagine
Excuse me.
all of our warriors becoming peaceful warriors, as Dan Millman would say, right? The idea of being centered, grounded, balanced, we're ready, willing, and able, still able to use deadly force if necessary, if the situation calls for it. But imagine being so in the zone that you could pick up on those things in milliseconds, and maybe you don't have to make that shot. Can you imagine how that would change the industry? If we are
Right.
not mentally hijacked by the events, if we're centered, grounded, balanced, we're the warrior. That's
Mhm.
true warriorship.
Okay, I love that. And that was a good review, especially for other people that didn't listen to other things. But now I'm going to challenge you with your vault of information because let's just say people are not going to get into breath work. They're not going to do that. That's boring as shit. Or whatever, okay? It sounds interesting, but I'm not doing it, Rodger and Nora. So, there's many other things because we're also trying to help teach not being impulsive, right? And so we mentioned different types of meditation, walking meditation, cutting vegetables, doing dishes, doing slow, driving slow, these sorts of things. But I want to ask you in that situation is that what about though the preparation you can do in terms of going before that call when you're like there are criminals, like you're dealing with a lot of motherfuckers, you're dealing with a lot of just unconscious people, you're dealing, that is the reality. I think you could create thinking, I'm not dealing with that today, like it won't be as bad. Or how would you, because it does exist to teach us lessons. I'm going to say that full out, to teach us a lesson. So maybe the lesson is, oh fuck, I should have called for backup sooner. I should have this, I should have that, and then you go all into that. What is a way, like a fresh way you think that they could look at, because you're dealing with, especially law enforcement, like you're helping to regulate chaos. What is there
Such an easy job.
is there a way when you get to the scene, like not only you created the mind, thinking this is going to be okay, this is going to go smooth, right? Can you do something immediately to de-escalate? Like what's the one thing you can do right away when you get there and somebody's just ballistic, or to take control and diffuse?
I did for years. I developed, and in fact, I'm still working on some projects around crisis intervention training, right? Breathwork is still number one because if we can regulate the autonomic nervous system and we can come in grounded, centered, balanced, that's the best place we can possibly be. And for those people that are listening that are like, whatever the story is around that, look to your special forces, look to professional athletes. Every single one of those people practices advanced breath work, and they
Mm-hmm.
do it as a culture. Why? Because it works.
Mm.
It's all about preparation. One of the things that has helped me tremendously was to enter into calls for service as I evolved. Again, this was not true in the beginning, but as I evolved, I am here to serve. And service might mean I need to use force against this person, put him in a set of handcuffs, book him into county because they're beyond reasonableness now. Or maybe it's a mental health issue and I need to take them to the crisis unit. That's my job too. It's still service. Coming from the heart of service does not mean we hug a thug. Sometimes we got to use force and be okay with that. But again, if we're coming from service, the beauty of that is we see that what we're doing is necessary, a huge societal role that few can do, very, very few. Now, when I'm in that heart of service, I'm not angry about what just happened. I don't take it personally that the guy assaulted me. Because if I'm angry about it, frustrated for days, weeks, years, and I'm holding on to that, I'm literally poisoning myself. I'm literally harming myself through the hormones of stress. Now, no organism can sustain forever under the hormones of stress. They will break down. It was designed to give us a boost so we can deal with what the threat is. But then this just hangs on to it. Looping the story. Cortisol, 1,400 negative chemicals flooding the bloodstream. And we keep doing that drip, 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 drip. So at the end of the day, if you don't make these shifts, if you choose not to do it, then the consequence of that down the road is mental and physical dysfunction. If you don't believe me, do your own research. It is conclusive. It is peer-reviewed. There's no way around it. So do these things. Take these steps. Learn how to be an effective warrior without harming yourself at the end of your journey, because you get 20, 30 years down the road, you're not going to like that guy or gal. It's going to be a bummer. So my response is get busy, start figuring this out, and find what works for you. You said something earlier I think is super key. We talked a little bit about meditation and about breath work. Well, there are about 1 million different ways to accomplish those things. You talked about taking a walk. Yeah, consciously walking while we breathe parasympathetically is meditation. Gardening can be a meditation. Swimming and working on the perfection of that swim stroke can be a meditation. Doing the dishes with 100% focus on that task is a meditation. Friends, go out there and explore and find the one that's juicy for you, that works for you, because my pathway was through a meditation practice called Kriya Yoga. It was a very complex, very involved system that I studied with monks and monastics for 15 years, deep down that rabbit hole. Worked for me. That's not going to work for everybody. That's a massive commitment. So find your joy, find the one that's like, I kind of like that. I like that transcendental meditation thing because it's a system. That's a kind of cool. I like this idea of Zen Buddhism. And this is how they stay present. Like they wash the dishes and that's all they do. They eat a meal. They don't talk. They don't get on their foot. They eat the meal and experience it. Wonderful. Find your jam and go do it.
Thank you. I think it's finding an interest, and sometimes people don't have an interest because of what I know of first responders, like a lot of people work a lot and they might actually like it. So for them, whatever it is that they are, whatever the reasons is, I guess it's not up to us to convince them. I'm just here to say that there's probably some aspects of your life that as a result of you working a lot, it affects things like relationships with others. So if you want to keep relationships with others, then, and your own mental health, you're so focused on your vanity or whatever it is. I'm not saying all of them are, but maybe you're focused on those sorts of things, or it could be you're focused on serving. Okay, but what about that saying, right? How are you going to take care of others if you don't care about yourself? And it can also show up with just getting sick in the flu. That's how it shows up, like how often it is, right? And you're just tired and exhausted trying to make it to retirement. But again, like we said, you're going to be dead first. So you might be dead. And so I know you got to go, Rodger, and it's really to the point, but can we finish with this last thing to end of just even two things on basically what other people are going to say about law enforcement now, because I'm bringing up Mr. Dion Joseph from LinkedIn, which also somebody made a comment like, you maybe you need to be somewhere else than LinkedIn, but talking about God, is that he basically said in his post, I don't know what you heard, but my badge doesn't make me a tough guy. My gun doesn't make me feel big. My vest doesn't make me invincible. My uniform doesn't make me better than you. My heart, my faith, my upbringing, my desire for justice for victims, my integrity, my honesty. These are the things that make me uniquely me. Some only see the top half based on their subjective and small minds. God knows the bottom. He's the only being whose opinion matters the most to me. So, what I just wanted to say, and I wanted to ask you to just say these some things, is that the bottom line is are coming from their own stories. They have their own opinions. They have the rights to all of that. And whether I would love to ask the person who responded to this if he knew what the word stereotyping is, because I feel like he was stereotyping from his experience all these things he's seen from bad cops or bad decision making or whatever it is, because it isn't all cops. So, as far as what other people say, and really it triggers things in us, that's also why we get mad. Try to not get mad when people are just speaking from what they know, and maybe they don't know. Really, maybe he does not know what stereotyping is. He's just mad. So he's like, oh, that sounds beautiful. You're one of the however many doing a good job, but still, whatever. What do you think, brother?
We have a lot of detractors now, and they're still in a minority of people in terms of numbers. The numbers are clear. The vast majority of people do support their law enforcement and other first responders too. And this particular group has had a lot of media play because controversy sells. I mean, that's the media's job, or how it's at least how they see it.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Joseph is, once again, being authentic. He's sharing his truth. You don't have to agree. And does it create critical thinking, or is it creating a reaction? If you have a reaction to something, anything we've said today, for example, oh, wow, take a pause for a moment and look at the
Yeah.
reaction. Look at the reactive nature, because in reaction, we can't respond. All we can do is react. We want to hit back, push back, do our side of the fence. And now what we're doing is we're in this competition thing rather than this beautiful collaboration thing. The Reverend Rabbi Kerry Friedman, I should say, he wrote a great book called Spiritual Survival for Law Enforcement. Now, before you go rolling your eyes about the God thing again, if that's a problem for you, Nora said something brilliant at the beginning of the show. So pick the word that fits for you, right? And even if
Yeah.
you're agnostic or atheist, Rabbi Friedman says, unless we have an absolute value system that we serve, we're going to get in trouble because we're taking it all onto ourselves. Now, I want to clarify absolute value system. That could be, I am a Buddhist, I am a Baptist, I'm a Lutheran. That could be your absolute value system. It could be that you belong to the Center for Spiritual Living, which was the foundation Ernest Holmes ultimately created. They're non-denominational. Maybe you believe in that as an absolute value system because they talk about God as more of a spiritual thing, etc., not the old man in the cloud kind of deal. Or maybe your absolute value system is the United States Constitution. You believe in the tenets of the foundations of this country so passionately that you get up every day to serve that value system. You see, when we take it all on ourselves, you can't sustain. You can't. We have to have something that we believe deeply and passionately in, and it doesn't have to be something in the universe, the ethereal aspects, the nature, the religion, the dogma. It doesn't have to be that. It can be that. But unless we have something to hang our hat on, we can get in trouble, and then we become that reactive person where all Mr. Joseph did was state his truth, his authentic truth, his belief. And if that creates a reaction in you, my advice is anytime we react to something, we need to take a time out when we get a moment and
Mm-hmm.
then ask ourselves, what was the source of that reaction? Why did I react that way? Instead of just taking in, why did I feel insulted, triggered? Why did that jack me up? Ask those questions, because as you mine back in time, you're going to find that the vast majority of that was a program placed into your consciousness during childhood that then just got created by the reticular activating system, pattern recognition, personality, personal reality. Boom. Look at the reactions, look at the triggers. That's where the juice is.
Well, I can almost bet money on it. It's because he used the word God.
Right. That's very
That's
triggering to a
all
lot
that
of
it
people.
was. Yeah, they don't like it, just like the word prayer.
Yeah, and
So
you
I
said it
get it.
brilliantly, Nora. Substitute a different word. It's
That's
okay.
all.
It's
That's all.
okay.
And that's what's so funny reading through that. Our screen is flickering like it's some sort of possession. Like that means shut it up.
It's a sign.
Yes. And I just changed, and I don't know what happened to me when I would, like, after I realized, I was like, wait a minute, pray. Like, but it's kind of like meditating intentional thought to myself. Okay. And I just made myself, like, again, because of the rebelling, like, I laugh at who I was. That's why I think I'm a really good person to talk about negative thinking. Like, well, you are too. So it's good.
100%.
Okay, I know, Roger, you got to go, and you went over your time. You should always know when you tell me, like, tell me the time, but it's really the time, like, you still have time more to do your thing. I
I
hope
always
you did.
appreciate our conversations, Nora. They're
Yes,
fun. They
yes,
go over hills and dales and down rabbit holes. And
yes.
folks, I'll just leave you with this parting idea. Anytime someone offers something that makes you go, huh? Take a look. Just take a look, because invariably it's going to get you out of the way that you are patterned in your thinking. And that's the value. When we get out of our normal way of thinking, we broaden our perspective. It doesn't mean you have to accept it, but what it does mean is you're doing more critical thinking. And that's really, to me, that's what's missing. Is many of us are buying a party line and we're not questioning enough. Question a little bit more. Look to your reactions and triggers. That's where the information lies. And to go and circle back all the way back, find yourself someone that you can be mentored by, someone who thinks differently than you. Maybe it's a coach, maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's a therapist. Who cares? The idea is we can get outside of our constraints. And when we broaden our perspective, I've never seen that be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Little scary, little scary. I'll acknowledge that, but it's never a bad thing, and it's going to lead to growth. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'd leave you with today.
Okay, thank you. And again, this is part of, I'm going to say it out loud again, though, too, is that trust the struggle, trust your struggle. Everything is happening perfectly, as you would say, right? And even
100%.
with seeing deaths and all these different things that happen in life that we can't always explain, and just know that there is the end result is, I don't know to say the end result is good, but feel like there is always some sort of good that comes from it,
Yeah.
even though it was frustrating, even though it might have been painful. But maybe you need to define what pain means to you is a whole nother thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because
It isn't easy.
so,
No one's going to say it's easy. This is not easy when you begin self-exploration, but it's
mm,
profound.
hmm. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Again, this is Rock Your Life with Nora Finch, the live series. This is Rodger Ruge, and you can find him, and I'll give all his contact information and all that sort of stuff. Okay? So thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, everybody.